So it's an interesting little space of sharing. Why? Is because we know that all of us have, I guess, a sense of confusion at times around money, and of course a very direct relationship with it. In fact, really, if we look into this, everything we do experience is in some way influenced and controlled by money. Now, at first we might think, oh, everything, is that really the case? But actually, if you even consider you want to go outside, you want to go to nature, the bush, where in the world is there any place that is not owned or controlled in some fashion? We might think, oh, nature is free, but actually for us to experience nature, our whole life involves, either directly or indirectly, money. So tracts of so-called nature are owned by governments and country or state run. So in essence, everything is entangled around money. What makes this such a big issue though is because underlying what money is are values. So we can consider money is really a certificate of exchange that we use for values or priorities, what we believe in. The issue we have with money that generates all of our emotions is because in having lost contact with the real value of ourself and life, we've actually misplaced our sense of control into an external measure and an external tool. Now, if we look at just the tool itself, that's all it is. It's a tool. We know that every single tool can be used positively or negatively. We can use that tool actually consciously or unconsciously. Now, currently, the monetary system in this world actually reflects the unconscious model of values. That means, as a tool, is currently used and driven for possession and control of values. If we embrace it consciously as a tool, we can actually use it to direct and liberate our values. Now, of course, that's at a certain level, because we know if we really explore the nature of money as it exists as a system in the world today, well, the system itself is completely constructed in measures of control and possession. So we can trace this back, all the way back to our roots as a human race, where we departed our relationship with the natural order of life, ourself, where nothing was actually possessed or controlled. Everything was truly free. It was an interconnected relationship we had with everything. We didn't consider ourselves superior, above, or somehow disconnected from this whole circle of life. And as such, we had a relationship of great harmony. We were profoundly in contact with the value of ourself and the value of all life. So we didn't see the need to control life. However, with the clever development of the human mind and the shift into agricultural mindset, what changed was the notion that somehow as a species we were superior and could perhaps control nature better than it could do itself. So in controlling nature, we shifted from the freedom and the connectedness for everyone, and therefore the value of everyone and everything in its diversity and sameness. We lost sight of the fact that everything being unique and distinct is of equal value because it actually is a fabric of the one life. So in taking on this method of agriculture and kind of farming and cultivating, it actually became a mentality, a basis of possession and control. So as that took up in the human psyche, of course, it came a point where that needed to be built into a system, because as we take on that psyche of control and possession, it actually is so disconnected from the natural order that it needs more of that. And if it needs more of that, it has to build a system that maintains that. Money is that system. So we can see that if we trace money back to its roots, it's actually all about that. It is a tool to possess and control value bases. Okay, we see in the world today there's some interesting shaking occurring. Systems are being challenged and shaken. We have, as an example, cryptocurrency, which is an example of decentralizing. So if we think of possession and control, that's about centralizing, isn't it? Someone else has superior ownership and control over the greater whole. So crypto kind of has a bit of a value system as an example of decentralizing, in other words, directing and liberating resources back to the whole. So this is a really, really interesting time on the planet, isn't it? That we know that the system of money is not working. We know the system of governance is not working. We know that our perceptions, all rooted in values, are so grossly distorted that we are sabotaging ourselves individually and collectively. The whole of life is actually being sabotaged. It is untenable. It's not working. What can we do about this then is to actually first of all recognize fundamentally, point one, money and any resource is a tool. If we recognize this, we can then investigate what values are driving that tool, because actually every tool is moved by our values. It's not actually moved by your wants. It's not actually moved by the objectification or the idea of your goals, what you want to achieve through that tool. It is actually driven by your priorities and your values. So this means if we want to transform this system of money, which is a value exchange measure, literally it's a certificate of exchange of values and priorities. If we want to transform this, we have to transform our values. We have to investigate our values. We have to understand what is our relationship to this tool. Is your relationship one of fear, one of control and possession? Yourself. Be honest with yourself. You might actually be very surprised as to how deeply you yourself have been sucked into that inculcated mindset, that in some way, through fear, you are caught in the same loop, seeking to control yourself and your circumstances and to establish a greater sense of possession in yourself and in your life. Why? Fundamentally, for security, because it is driven by fear. If we were to momentarily, even just in our imagination, return to our roots and reconnect to the knowing in our heart, in our soul, in our primal being, that we are equally a part of the entire fabric of existence, and in that is our true value. If we can inherently reawaken that, then we begin to shake the basis of fear. Our fear perceptions and identification around every tool we're using. So, there's a lot of talk in the world today around, becoming a conscious creator and how do we manifest consciously, etc. But mostly the approach is still coming from the fear basis. You think, well, I want to create more consciously because actually I'm afraid of the system the way it is. You might not really clearly mentally realize that or recognize that, but that's actually what is driving that need or that desire. So because it's still rooted in the same level of the psyche, the analysis of it, or the questions or the models that people adopt to try to change that, is actually still coming from the same level. And that we actually do see a lot of that still in all these ideas and teachings around manifestation. It's like, okay, what do you want? And you pay attention to this. When you start thinking, what do I want? What actually happens when you start thinking what you want? Your mind projects outwardly, externally, into the future, into the objects, into the goals. It doesn't come back in at all. So if we truly want to manifest consciously and transform the way we do relate to this so-called tool and exchange of values, we actually have to connect at a different level. And that means if you really want to begin to manifest a more conscious life, you must focus not on the wants, not on the objective outcomes and goals, but actually on your values. Manifestation is rooted in what we value. If we, as spiritual seekers and beings really devoted to truth, and we all have this knowing that we truly are one and that our system is not working, then this is where it begins. We have to undo the values which keep us trapped in this illusory game. Like we're just caught in this wheel of chasing everything we think we want. Ultimately, to be left profoundly disappointed because actually we're just chasing after false expectations constantly. We actually cannot be fulfilled and satisfied through that externalized, objectified game. We can only be satisfied when we fulfill our deepest, most innate and true values. And these innate values are actually not trapped in our materialistic notions. They are not object orientated. They are not goal directed. And one of the reasons we find that so difficult is because here now, today, in our world, our life, our whole experience, we're caught in this modern world and society in doing. And that doing is a constant projection, chasing into the next moment, and it keeps that perpetual loop alive, the fixation on the objects and the outcomes. When we come back to our innate values, actually we discover it is about being. Let's consider again, tracing back our roots, our human experience, and consider for a moment how we lost touch with our experience of literally living in paradise. We didn't have to go and till and toil and protect and possess and control. We didn't have to do that because nature is working perfectly. We have everything we need in every moment. So if we go back to those roots and we actually re-envisage ourselves, we reawaken that story of connectivity, you actually begin to feel again that here now. The reality here now, not the projected screen of the mind and its ideas of the future and being entrapped in these materialistic notions, materialistic value bases, which all come back to control and possession. So by reorienting ourselves and reconnecting to our innate self, our natural self, we simultaneously come back to beingness.